Hi First Kids, it's Miss Joy here, and I have your lesson this week. We're going to be learning about Gideon. I don't know if you've heard of him before, but he's a guy we learn about in the Old Testament and the book of Judges. And God was really calling him to do something pretty special, but he wasn't so sure about God's call. So we're going to hear about what he did and what he learned and in just a minute. If you want to get your Bibles and meet me back here, then go ahead and go do that. We're going to be in the book of Judges, chapter 6, verses 33 to 40. Okay? So meet me here in just a minute as soon as you can get your Bibles. All right? See you in just a second. Okay, First Kids, you have your Bibles. You ready to follow along? So again, we're in Judges, chapter 6, verses 33 to 40. Okay, here we go. The story about Gideon. Soon afterward, the armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east formed an alliance against Israel and crossed the Jordan, camping in the valley of Jezreel. Then the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon with power. He blew a ram's horn as a call to arms, and the men of the clan of Abiezer came to him. He also sent messengers throughout Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, summoning their warriors, and all of them responded. Then Gideon said to God, "If you are truly going to use me to rescue Israel as you promised, prove it to me in this way. I will put a wool fleece on the threshing floor tonight. If the fleece is wet with dew in the morning, but the ground is dry, then I'll know that you are going to help me rescue Israel as you promised." And that is just what happened. When Gideon got up early the next morning, he squeezed the fleece and wrung out a whole bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, "Please don't be angry with me, but let me make one more request. Please let me use the fleece for one more test. This time, let the fleece remain dry while the ground around it is wet with dew." So that night, God did just as Gideon asked. The fleece was dry in the morning, but the ground was covered with dew. Okay, First Kids, so let's talk a little bit about Gideon. So Gideon was a guy that, if you go back, we can learn a little bit more about him in the earlier part of chapter 6 of Judges. If you want to go back and read that, then you can. So what we know about him is that he was the youngest and the weakest in his family, and his family was the smallest and weakest in the whole group of families where they lived. So he didn't feel like he was the person that God should have called to save Israel. So he wasn't feeling great about that. Maybe you felt that way sometime. But anyway, so God called him, and he was like, "Okay, God, but I'm not so sure about that." So his test was, the way he wanted to be sure, is that he asked God if he could give him a test. And he had a fleece. Now I have here, this is really just a cloth that I have, but a fleece is like a sheep's wool. So this is kind of like that. It's white and fluffy. But anyway, it's not a sheep's wool. But he had his fleece, and he said, "I'm going to lay it outside. And in the morning, if the fleece is wet, but all the ground around it is dry, then I'll know that it's really you I'm hearing from." So what happened? God did it, right? He did the test, and he did it exactly what Gideon asked him to do. The fleece was wet and the ground was dry. So then Gideon was all good, right? No, not exactly. So Gideon still wasn't 100% sure. He was getting there, but he still wasn't 100% sure. So he said, God, don't get mad at me, but I have one more test. This time, I'm going to do the reverse of what I asked you to do yesterday. So I'm going to put the fleece out, and if in the morning my fleece is dry, but the ground all around it is wet, then I'll really know that it's you that's talking to me. So what happened in our story? Well, God came through and answered Gideon in just the way he asked. And then Gideon did believe. And then Gideon went on to lead the army, and they defeated the Midianites and all the other armies that were coming against them. So, cool story. And what I want you to remember, it was an amazing miracle, because I don't know if you guys have been out of your house early in the morning and seen the dew on the grass and your feet get all wet, because everything is wet, right? And even if you leave like your bicycle or a skateboard or something else out in the yard, then it's all going to be wet. So it was pretty amazing that the fleece was dry when all the ground was wet. And then the opposite too, that the fleece was the only thing that was wet and the whole ground was dry. Crazy. But God did it. So, our God can do miracles like that. So really cool. And what Gideon learned was, that really grew his faith, because what he learned was that God was really calling him, and that he was important enough to God for God to speak and answer him in exactly the way that Gideon asked. So God knew what Gideon needed, and he spoke to him in just the way he needed. So Gideon felt small, but God had a big plan for him. So I hope you guys will know that God also has a really big plan for you. And maybe you have enough faith that you won't have to put out a fleece or test God in some way, but maybe you can just trust God, and your faith can be big enough that you can trust him and follow him and trust in the plans that he has for you. But I also want you to know that if you're still growing in your faith, just like Gideon was, that's okay, because God was not mad or upset with Gideon. He didn't stop loving him because he questioned him or get angry at him. He was fine with Gideon's questions, and he knew that Gideon was still growing in his faith. So if you have questions, don't be scared to ask God questions. He loves questions, and because he has all the answers. So there's no need to be scared or worry about that. So he loves you. Remember that, and continue to grow in your faith. Okay? See you guys soon. Bye.